Last week we were yelling at Google for their web environment integrity. Rightfully so, because I stand by the fact that it's an absolutely terrible idea. And that problem has not gone away. It's still very much an issue that needs attention. But it is not the only thing that Google is working on. They also work on an operating system, that being ChromeOS. Now, I wouldn't normally talk about ChromeOS on this channel, but the change that they are making is so simple and so obvious, you're going to wonder why it's taken so long to happen and why it wasn't like this from the start. You probably know that ChromeOS is designed in this absolutely insane way, where the web browser, the Chrome browser, is tightly integrated with the system UI. But do you know just how tightly integrated? So tightly, in fact, that the window manager they use on ChromeOS called the Ash window manager, the login screen, and things like this are in the same binary as the web browser. I am not joking here. I am not making this up. This is what it says in the Chromium documentation. On ChromeOS, the system UI, Ash window manager, login screen, etc., and the web browser are the same binary. I've always known that ChromeOS was designed in this really insane way. I didn't realize it was just that insane. But no need to think about it, because that model might be coming to an end, or at least changing a little bit. So Kevin C. Toffel of About Chromebooks noticed an interesting change with ChromeOS 1.16. A very simple change, 2 lines added to the documentation. Pre-M116, set Lacrosse support to enabled. Pre-M116, set Lacrosse primary to enabled. Now without context of what Lacrosse means, that probably means nothing. And we're not talking about the sport Lacrosse. Lacrosse is a project that Google unveiled about 2 or so years ago. In a sense, a new browser project. I say in a sense for a very good reason. Lacrosse is an architecture project to decouple the Chrome browser from the ChromeOS window manager and system UI. The name comes from Linux and ChromeOS. Personally, I'm not a fan of acronyms that just take letters from elsewhere in the word, but whatever. That's the name they're going to go with. So the idea is splitting the browser from the desktop. I said it was going to be a really obvious design decision, but the way they're going about it, because their system is so weirdly designed, is incredible. The basic approach is to rename the existing binary, the existing, Chrome browser desktop binary they have, to Ash Chrome. So renaming it to the name of the window manager with minimal changes. We then take the Linux Chrome binary, improve its Wayland support, make it act like the web browser on ChromeOS, and ship that as the Lacrosse Chrome browser. The existing Linux Chrome they have is fine for Linux, but they want to make it more integrated into their Chrome system. This allows the 2 binaries to be released independently, with some performance/resource costs. The API boundary initially will be semi-stable. It will tolerate 1 to 2 milestone of version skew. We may allow larger amounts of skew in the future. Lacrosse can be imagined as Linux Chrome with more Wayland support. Lacrosse uses Ozone as an abstraction layer for graphics and event handling. Ozone has a backend with client-side support for the Wayland Compositor protocol. In case you didn't know, all of the graphics stack on ChromeOS now is using a regular Linux graphics stack. They were going to do their own internal in-house thing, but they decided to go with Wayland. I was seeing a lot of outlets report on this as decoupling the browser and the desktop on ChromeOS. That's not what's happening here. The browser and the desktop is still just as coupled together. That part isn't changing. The change is they now just have a second version of Chrome installed that is not coupled to the desktop. Nothing's being decoupled. This allows a crazy idea, okay? Follow along with me because this is going to seem like really advanced high-level stuff. You can update the browser separate from the desktop. Mind blown. Now, Lacrosse as an option on ChromeOS is certainly not new. It's been available for use since all the way back in 2021, as Kevin was showing in this blog post. But back at this time and prior to 1.16, if you had Lacrosse enabled, it wouldn't just be the only browser on your system. In this screenshot here, you can see there is both the regular Chrome looking logo down the bottom here, and also this yellow version. The regular one is the version of Chrome that is powering your entire desktop, and the yellow one, this is Lacrosse. But because you had these two browsers on your system, and it was still heavily relying on the main version, if you opened up certain things that open up in the regular version of Chrome, if you opened other things that open up in Lacrosse, so it wasn't as smooth of an experience as just having one browser available. Prior to 1.16, if you wanted to enable Lacrosse, you would set these two flags. That suggests that once ChromeOS 1.16 arrives, you won't have to set those two experimental flags to enable to have Lacrosse on your Chromebook. But that's just part of my thought process. The important part is this. I also noticed that on a Chromebook running the latest ChromeOS 1.16 beta channel, the Lacrosse support flag, this flag right here, no longer exists. So I can't enable the Lacrosse browser manually on that device. At least not with the settings I've used for nearly 2 years. However, the Lacrosse primary flag is still there. Clearly something is changing with ChromeOS 1.16 here, and it may just be a cleanup of the Lacrosse browser flags, or it could be when Google flips the switch and reaches the home stretch of its efforts to decouple the Chrome browser from ChromeOS. As I said, it's not really decoupling it, it's still very coupled, it's just a second version that is not coupled. Anyway, Lacrosse is the only browser on my Chromebook. After a little more digging into the available flags, I noticed that there are several hundred mentions of Lacrosse in them. That's a result of Google migrating existing flags to support the Lacrosse browser. This would ensure that existing features would still work. But he noticed an interesting setting. Lacrosse is the only browser. Use Lacrosse Chrome as the only web browser on ChromeOS. This flag's ignored if Lacrosse support or primary is disabled. This flag isn't new, and it mentions it in the documentation here that it was available in that prior version. But when he selected the option, it showed him a flash screen that he couldn't get a screenshot of because it showed too quickly. And then when he opened up Chrome again, it had a different version. This time it said it was beta Lacrosse. But the difference here is on the previous version, he had two browsers, Chrome and Lacrosse. Yes, they're effectively the same, but they're built different. Also, they are two separate binaries. The former is the one integrated into ChromeOS, while the other is the standalone Linux version of Chrome. On this testing device, I now just have one browser, and it doesn't appear I can have both any longer. It seems like they're experimenting with having Lacrosse as the main browser and not showing the system version of Chrome to the user, having that doing all of its stuff in the background, but keeping it separate from the thing that the user actually interacts with. Now, you're probably wondering why any of this matters. Well, ChromeOS has this really nasty automatic expiration date. Any device released after 2020 will just stop receiving updates after 8 years. It used to be 4 years after a device's release date, updates would just stop. 4 years is well within the range of people keeping a device, especially if you're buying a more expensive Chromebook, like, some of the $1,000 or $1,500 ones. Like, that's a device you might have for your entire time at high school, for example. 4 years, and especially 8 years, might not sound like that big of a deal. Like, that's a long time to have a device. The problem is it's based on the device's release date, not the day that you buy the device. And there are companies that will sell devices for 2, 3, 4 years before updating the line. So in some cases, people were buying Chromebooks with a 6-month update period or a 1-year update period with no idea that there was any problem whatsoever. The 8 years at least gives most devices. There's still going to be some devices that get sold for much longer than they should be that have a really short update period, but it's much less of a problem now than it was before. With this change, it allows Google to continue updating the browser the user is primarily interacting with to do their banking, to go on Facebook, to check their emails, and all this stuff when a device has passed its automatic expiration date, allowing users to have at least a somewhat safer device. Now, Google could just fix their support period and not have an automatic expiration date on their devices. They could do that, but how would you convince people to buy a new Chromebook every couple of years then? You gotta have an automatic expiration date, otherwise they just won't do it. Because, hey, if you have, let's say, 3 kids that are like a year or 2 apart, why wouldn't you just buy one of them a Chromebook and then pass that device down through each of the kids? Because if they didn't automatically expire, they kept getting updates, you could very easily do that. See? You gotta stop people doing that and make them buy the new thing, because we need your money. I know I'm just mocking them at this point, but having an up-to-date browser is incredibly important. It doesn't matter if it's Firefox, it doesn't matter if it's Chrome, it doesn't matter if it's Brave, Vivaldi, or anything else out there. There are going to be zero-day exploits in your browser, and getting those dealt with as quickly as possible is very, very important. Are any of you actually ChromeOS users? I know ChromeOS is like Linux under the hood, it's basically Gen 2, so do any of you mess around with these systems? Maybe not as like a main device, but maybe you just want to experiment with them to see what they can actually do. I would certainly love to know. So if you like the video, go like the video, and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and praise our Google overlords.
Something like this.